You know how sometimes we are lying in bed, completely ready to sleep, and suddenly your brain replays something embarrassing from years ago, or even something recent, a strange thing you said, an awkward interaction, that misinterpreted text, or that one joke that didn't land in 2018. A moment nobody else probably even remembers anymore, and somehow, instead of simply letting it go, your brain keeps replaying it, while also pulling up even more uncomfortable memories connected to it. Or sometimes the opposite happens. Instead of replaying the past, your brain keeps imagining future problems that haven't even happened yet. What if this goes wrong? What if people judge me? What if I fail? Psychologists often describe these patterns a little differently. Rumination is usually more connected to the past, replaying mistakes, failures, embarrassing memories. Worry is usually more connected to the future, imagining uncertainty, future problems, things that could go wrong. But modern research suggests they overlap much more than we once thought. Both involve repetitive thinking, difficulty letting go of thoughts, and a strong negative emotional focus. So, why does this happen? Why does the mind sometimes get trapped in these loops? Today, we are looking at a fascinating paper by Hitchcock and Frank from Emory and Brown University. The paper proposes something really interesting, that repetitive negative thinking may happen when the brain system for managing thoughts becomes stuck in an unproductive pattern. Not because the brain is weak or not because someone is unintelligent, but because the systems involved in guiding and switching thoughts may stop working efficiently. The paper calls this repetitive negative thinking. And just like physical movement can fail, mental control can fail too. Think like walking. Most of the time, your brain coordinates movement automatically, but occasionally you trip. Maybe the curb was higher than expected, maybe your shoelace was loose. The authors suggest something similar may happen with thinking. Normally, the brain can guide thoughts productively. It can evaluate a problem, shift attention, learn from experiences, and move on. But sometimes that process becomes stuck, and instead of solving a problem, the brain keeps returning to the same negative thoughts again and again. The paper calls this failure in meta control, basically, control over mental behavior itself. And according to the paper, there are four stages where this process can break down. Stage 1, the impossible question, also called hypothesis selection. This is the stage where the brain chooses what problem it wants to solve. If the brain chooses a concrete problem, there's usually a clear finish line. For example, how do I fix this broken chair? That problem is specific, actionable, solvable. But repetitive negative thinking often begins with much more open ended questions. Imagine you were at a party, you said something awkward, and someone suddenly left that conversation. Now your brain starts asking questions like, why am I so awkward? What do people really think of me? And what if everyone noticed? The paper describes these kind of thoughts as extremely difficult to fully resolve because there's no clear answer. I mean, how would I know what everyone thinks about me? How would I know why am I so awkward? So there's no clear stopping point. And when the brain can't reach a satisfactory conclusion, it may keep searching for more evidence, more memories, more interpretations, and more possibilities, almost like leaving too many tabs open in the mind. So instead of solving a problem, the brain stays trapped trying to answer a question with no real finish line. Then there is stage 2, sticky thinking, also called executing sub goals. Once the brain accepts that negative idea, it starts pulling up related thoughts and memories. The researchers suggest that some people experience stickier thinking patterns. So, when you think about one embarrassing moment, your brain may also pull up other awkward memories, relationship problems, times you felt rejected, or moments you failed in the past. One thought activates another, and then another. The paper explains that one negative thought can trigger many connected sub thoughts, which can quickly spiral into a much larger chain of thinking. So, what started as that conversation was awkward can slowly become people don't like me. I always do this. Something is wrong with me. Almost like opening more and more tabs in the brain until the mind becomes overloaded. Then there is stage 3, the broken off switch, that is, switching between thoughts. Normally, healthy thinking requires flexibility. The brain evaluates something and then shifts attention elsewhere. But during repetitive negative thinking, the brain may struggle to disengage from negative mental content. The paper describes this as a tension between stability and flexibility. Stability helps us stay focused, flexibility helps us move on. And sometimes the brain may become too stable around negative thoughts. Instead of switching attention, the mind keeps circling around the same idea repeatedly. This may explain why, even when you want to stop thinking about something, you still can't let it go. And when there are fewer external distractions, the looping can become even more noticeable. Interestingly, another neuroscience review by Tubbs and co authors called The Mind After Midnight proposes that these repetitive negative thoughts may feel even stronger late at night. The authors suggest that during nocturnal wakefulness, emotional regulation becomes weaker, negative mood tends to increase, and the brain may become less flexible in controlling attention and behavior. In other words, at 2 a.m., the brain may not process thoughts the same way it does during the day, which may partly explain why certain worries, embarrassing memories, or catastrophic thoughts can suddenly feel much bigger at night. Lastly, there is stage 4, the reinforcement trap, that is learning from consequences. This final stage is about learning. The brain is constantly trying to learn what behaviors are useful, and strangely, repetitive negative thinking can sometimes feel temporarily useful. For example, replaying an embarrassing memory can create the feeling that if I think about this enough, maybe I can avoid this happening again. So, even though the feeling feels painful, the brain may still continue returning to it because part of the brain treats the process as protective, preparing, or emotionally important that could help prevent future mistakes. But over time, the loop can become unproductive. Instead of helping solve problems, it keeps the mind trapped. So, according to this paper, rumination and worry may not simply be overthinking. They may reflect moments where the brain's thought management system becomes stuck. And understanding these loops matters because repetitive negative thinking is linked to anxiety, depression, and emotional distress across many different conditions, which also means learning healthier ways to redirect attention, challenge broad negative beliefs, and break repetitive loops may help the brain regain healthier control over thought patterns. So, what does this mean for you at 2 a.m. replaying something embarrassing from 5 years ago? The most important takeaway from this research is the goal may not be to force thoughts away completely. Instead, it may be more helpful to help the brain shift out of repetitive loops. One way is to make thoughts more concrete. Instead of asking, "Why am I like this?" try asking, "What is one thing I can do differently next time?" Another approach is to gently redirect attention. This is why techniques like breathing exercises, grounding exercises, or focusing on external sensations may sometimes help because they encourage the brain to shift away from repetitive loops. So, next time your brain starts replaying a mental cringe moment, remember your brain may not be trying to hurt you, it may actually be trying unsuccessfully to protect you. And sometimes recognizing the loop itself is the first step toward stepping out of it. Sleep well.